What happens when a billionaire CEO wipes a counter and gets handed a barista's last $5 to help a coworker get home? Darren Mitchell built his cafe chain from a beat-up food truck in Austin to 10 bustling coffee shops across Texas. No investors. No shortcuts. Just long nights, burned beans, and learning how to get it right. But lately, something fell off. Sales at the East Side location were steady, but customer feedback kept dipping. Complaints about slow service, cold coffee, and a weird atmosphere. Darren hated secondhand reports. He wanted the truth. He picked East Side for a reason. It was the only one he'd never stepped foot in. It opened during his daughter's surgery last year, and he trusted the new manager and district lead to handle it. The place had been running for 6 months now. Long enough to settle in. Or fall apart. He shaved his beard, dyed his hair a shade darker, and used a fake name, Danny. His clothes looked like something a broke college student would wear: baggy hoodie, scuffed sneakers, and a ball cap low over his face. No one at East Side had ever met him. The company's HQ was in a different city, and most of the staff only knew the owner as a name on their paycheck. He signed up for a barista trainee shift under the excuse of needing part-time work to help with rent. The district manager, a guy named Kyle, had signed off on it after a quick phone call where Darren pretended to be a family friend of someone in HR. Kyle didn't ask questions. Just said, "We're short anyway."
Fine.
When Darren walked into the cafe at 6:30 in the morning, the place was already buzzing. A line stretched out the door. One customer walked out after waiting too long, muttering, "Not worth it." Behind the counter, 2 baristas scrambled to keep up. One was a tall guy in his 20s with tired eyes and flour on his apron. The other was a young woman, fast and focused, her curly hair tied up in a red bandana. She moved like she'd been doing this for years, but still found time to smile at every customer. "Hey," she called over the milk steamer. "The new trainee?" Darren stepped forward.
"Yeah, I'm Danny."
"I'm Jenna," she said, offering a quick handshake. "Stick close. We're down 2 people again." "How come?" "Manager hasn't fixed the schedule in weeks. People keep quitting because no one listens. You'll see." Darren nodded, grabbed a rag, and started wiping counters like he'd done 100 times before, only this time, nobody knew who he really was. The manager, Lacey, showed up an hour later. No apology, no explanation. She didn't say hello to the crew. Just walked into the back with an iced coffee in hand and closed the office door. Darren glanced at Jenna. "She always like that?" "Yep," Jenna said, tossing a muffin tray into the sink. "We haven't had a huddle in a month. She just chills in the office or leaves halfway through the shift." As the day wore on, Darren saw it all. Orders mixed up. A broken fridge no one had fixed. Jenna covering 3 stations while the other guy, Luis, nearly dropped from exhaustion. Customers were polite, but the tension was thick. One woman asked for almond milk and got whole milk instead. Another asked to speak to the manager. Jenna apologized and offered her a free pastry. Lacey never came out. Around noon, Luis leaned against the sink, breathing hard. "I gotta go home early," he said to Jenna. "My blood sugar's crashing. I forgot my insulin this morning." "You okay?" Jenna asked, stepping closer. "I'll make it. I don't have cash for the bus." Darren watched silently, pretending to scrub a counter, heart sinking. Jenna looked into her tip jar. Not much in there, maybe $7 total. She pulled out a crumpled $5 bill and pressed it into Luis's hand. "Take it. I'll cover your station. Just get home, okay?" Luis looked stunned. "You sure?"
"Yeah."
"Go." Luis left. Jenna turned back to the espresso machine like nothing happened. Darren walked over, cloth in hand, and said quietly, "That your last tip?" She shrugged. "It's just money." He needed it more. Darren didn't say anything. He just kept wiping the counter, trying to hide the ache in his chest. He'd built this place so people could grow, not suffer. The rest of the shift was chaos. Jenna and Darren held the place together. Lacey disappeared again, only coming out to yell when someone forgot to restock the napkin holder. She didn't even notice Luis was gone. At the end of the day, Jenna collapsed onto a stool. "You did good for your first day," she said. Darren smiled softly. "Thanks. You too." She laughed. "Too bad that doesn't get me a raise." Darren didn't respond. He just watched her, knowing tomorrow wouldn't be the same. The following morning, Darren parked 2 blocks away and walked to the café with a to-go cup of gas station coffee in hand. He wanted to see how it felt to line up like a regular customer before clocking in. The line wasn't long yet, just 3 people ahead of him, but no one was at the register. The espresso machine was hissing in the background, and Jenna's voice called out an order. After a moment, one of the customers muttered, "Is anyone even working the front?" Darren stepped out of line, slipped around the side, and entered through the back entrance. Inside, Jenna was juggling both the register and bar. Her hair was damp at the roots, and she was wearing the same red bandana from yesterday, now faded and flecked with coffee splatter. There was a new girl, maybe 17, nervously fumbling with a milk jug near the prep sink. "Morning," Darren said as he tied on his apron. Jenna didn't look up.
Hey.
Kyle said someone new was coming in today to help train, but she's never worked food service. Lacey's not here yet. Again. The new girl dropped the jug. It rolled toward Darren's feet, leaking from the cap.
Sorry.
"Sorry," she gasped, crouching to grab it. Darren bent down and passed it back to her. "No problem."
I'm Danny.
"You?"
Maria.
"I just started yesterday." He gave her a nod, then turned to Jenna. "You slept at all?" 3 hours, she said, voice flat.
I fine.
He didn't push it. Instead, he slid behind the counter and started taking orders. It was a mess. Inventory labels were wrong. Half the syrups were empty, and the POS system froze twice before noon. Still, they kept moving. Maria was slow, but careful. Jenna never stopped moving. At 10, Kyle walked in. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a tailored polo and mirrored sunglasses still on indoors. He didn't greet anyone. He walked straight to the back, looked around, and asked loudly, "Why hasn't the pastry display been rotated?" Jenna was mid-pour. "Because we didn't get the delivery." Kyle frowned. "You were supposed to call and confirm it yesterday."
I did.
"They said it's on back order." "I'll handle it," he snapped. "When Lacey gets here, tell her I want a word. She's not on the schedule today." Kyle looked at the whiteboard, blinked, then muttered something under his breath and stormed into the office. He stayed there for an hour. When the lunch rush hit, things fell apart. A woman with a stroller asked for a table to be wiped down. Darren grabbed a rag and did it himself. A group of high schoolers complained their drinks were wrong. Maria was near tears, trying to remake one, her hand trembling as she poured oat milk. Darren stepped beside her.
Breathe.
"You're doing fine. I'll fix the other orders. Just take your time." She nodded, biting her lip. At 1:30, the espresso machine sputtered and made a loud clunk. Jenna groaned. "It's doing that thing again." Darren looked at the pressure gauge. It was redlining. "You cleaned it last night?" "Didn't have time. I'm not even supposed to be the one doing it." "Who is?" "Lacey said she assigned it to Luis last week, but then she cut his hours." Darren opened the maintenance panel. It was caked in residue. He shut it again. "We need to shut it down before it burns out. If we do, we can't make half the menu." He looked around. The line was out the door again. "We'll make it work. I'll start doing cold drinks." Jenna hesitated, then nodded. "I'll talk to customers. Try to explain." She stepped out from behind the bar, approached the line, and began calmly offering alternatives. Darren listened closely.
Her tone was measured but honest.
She didn't blame anyone, just explained the situation and offered coupons for those who'd waited longest. Kyle finally emerged from the office. "What's going on?" he asked sharply. Jenna turned to him. "The espresso machine's overheating. We're running cold menu only until someone can look at it." Kyle looked at Darren. "Who told you to make that call?" "No one," Darren replied, wiping down the blender. "It's either that or replace the whole boiler next week."
Kyle scoffed.
"You're a trainee. You don't make decisions." Jenna stepped in. "He's right. It's been breaking down for a week. I've filed the maintenance request 3 times. No response." Kyle turned to her, voice low. "I don't remember asking for your input." Darren's hands froze mid-wipe. Jenna held still, eyes flicking to Maria, who had stopped stirring a drink. Kyle continued, louder this time. "I'm tired of your attitude. You're not a lead. You're barely holding your station together." Jenna's jaw tightened. "Because I'm doing 3 jobs at once." Kyle stepped closer. "You think that makes you special? You want a gold star for showing up?" Darren set the rag down. "Hey." Kyle turned to him.
"What?"
"I don't care what your title is, you don't talk to people like that." Kyle crossed his arms. "You got a problem? You're standing here berating someone who's been keeping this place afloat while the actual manager disappears every day. That's a problem." Kyle took a step toward him. "You don't know how this place runs." "I do now. I've seen enough." Jenna looked between them, confused. Maria had backed toward the dish station. Kyle sneered.
"Right.
You've been here 2 days and think you know everything." Darren pulled off his cap. Jenna's eyes widened. Maria gasped. Kyle blinked. "What?" Darren's voice was calm, but firm. "My name's Darren Mitchell. I own this company." Silence. Kyle's mouth opened, then closed. "Wait, this is—" "Yes," Darren said. "And you're done here." Kyle's shoulders stiffened. "You can't just— You've created a hostile environment, neglected your responsibilities, and demeaned the very people keeping this location running.
I don't tolerate that."
Clean out your things." Kyle looked to Jenna, then to Maria, as if expecting someone to defend him. No one spoke. He turned and walked into the office. Darren looked at Jenna. "You okay?" She was still staring at him, stunned. "You're the owner?" He nodded.
"Yeah."
"I came here because I kept getting reports that didn't make sense. Now I know why." She laughed once, short and sharp. "This is insane." "You've been carrying more than anyone should," he said. "That ends now." Maria whispered, "Is Kyle really fired?" "Yes." Darren looked around the shop. The espresso machine was quiet. The drink queue was still backed up. Jenna's shoulders finally slumped, as if the weight had just started to lift. "I need to talk to Lacey next," he said. "But first, let's get through the rest of the shift." Jenna nodded slowly. "Okay. But you're helping on dishes." Darren grinned. "Fair." They got back to work. No one mentioned Kyle again. The espresso machine hissed back to life the following morning, its boiler freshly descaled by a technician Darren had called in himself. He'd arrived before sunrise, still under the radar for most of the team except for Jenna and Maria, both of whom had shown up early despite not being scheduled until later. Darren didn't question it. He simply handed them both a breakfast sandwich and said, "You're not working until your shift starts."
"Seat. Eat."
Jenna blinked. "Is this real?" He nodded. "You've earned it." She hesitated, then took the food and sat at the side counter. Maria followed her lead, unwrapping her sandwich in silence. Darren leaned against the fridge and turned to Jenna. "Lacey texted me last night," he said. "Didn't apologize. Just asked if she still had a job." Jenna raised her eyebrows. "She didn't check in with anyone here." "I know. I called her this morning. She didn't answer. I'll be dealing with that today." Maria pushed a napkin across the counter. "Do you think she even knew how bad it was?" "She knew," Jenna said before Darren could answer. "She just didn't care." Darren didn't argue. Instead, he stood and walked to the staff board in the back. The schedule was still full of crossed-out names and overlapping shifts. He pulled it down and tossed it in the trash. By mid-morning, word had spread that Kyle was gone. Some employees looked relieved. Others looked confused. A few asked questions, which Darren answered directly, without ceremony. Was he fired because of yesterday? One of the afternoon baristas asked. He was fired because he didn't lead, Darren replied. And because no one should be afraid to come to work. The day moved slowly. Without Kyle and Lacey, the chain of command was fractured. But something else was different too. For the first time in weeks, no one was being barked at, ignored, or blamed. The team worked with quiet determination, like people waiting to see if things would actually change. Around noon, Darren pulled Jenna aside near the back hallway. "You're not a shift lead, right?" She shook her head. "No title. No raise. Just extra responsibility." "How long have you been here?" "For years. I started before this location, even opened worked at the South Congress shop." "Why didn't you apply for management?" "I did.
Twice."
Lacey said I didn't have the presence. Whatever that means. Darren studied her face. Did she ever give specifics? She said I was too direct and not approachable enough. But I trained 3 of the last 5 hires. Anyone ever complain about you to HR?
No.
I don't even think HR knows we exist out here.
He didn't respond.
He didn't need to. She already knew. Minutes later, Lacey walked in. She wore sunglasses, despite the cloudy sky outside, and carried a half-finished iced drink from a competitor's café. She paused just inside the door, clearly surprised to see Darren in uniform, standing behind the espresso machine. He didn't wait for her to speak. "Office."
"Now."
She hesitated. "I didn't know you'd be, office." "Lacey." When the door shut behind them, Darren stayed standing. She sat, crossing her legs and looking at the floor. "I read your shift reports," he began. "They're almost all cut and paste from the month before." "I've been overwhelmed," she said. "Kyle was supposed to handle those. You're the store manager. You're responsible for the team, the schedule, the maintenance requests. What exactly have you been doing?" Lacey leaned back. "I've been managing the chaos. You have no idea how short-staffed we've been. I'm not interested in excuses. I've been here for 3 days. I've seen what you call managing. You disappear for hours, you don't check in when equipment breaks, and you're allowing a hostile environment to exist because it's easier for you to avoid it." She stayed silent. "You let Jenna carry this store, while undermining her behind her back. I never told her not to help. You told her she didn't have presence. What does that mean?" "I didn't think she had the right look." Darren leaned forward. "Right look." Lacey flinched slightly. Her hair's always a mess. She wears that bandana. She doesn't smile the way customers expect. You're talking about a woman who gave a coworker her last tip, so he could get home. Someone who's been here longer than you have. Someone who's been mentoring new hires without being asked. And you dismissed her because she didn't fit some aesthetic you decided matters more than results. Lacey opened her mouth, then closed it. "You're done here," Darren said. "Effective immediately. You're firing me?"
"Yes."
"This isn't a negotiation." Lacey scoffed. "You think you'll replace me with Jenna? I think she's already doing the job. The difference is she's doing it well." He stood up and opened the office door. "You can gather your things. We'll mail you your final paycheck." She didn't say goodbye. When Darren stepped back into the cafe, Jenna was restocking lids. She looked up, eyes steady. "She's gone," Darren said. Jenna nodded once. "Okay. You're not obligated to step into anything right away, but we'll need someone to stabilize this store in the next few weeks. You're the only person I trust to do that." "I'll think about it," she said. "But I'm not doing it for free." "You won't. We'll talk compensation. You'll have full autonomy to rebuild the team." And I want daily reports until we get a new regional lead. She paused, then said, "We're going to need another hire. Maybe two. I'll approve it today. And the schedule? Use whoever you trust to help build the next one. I'll get someone from HQ to assist." Jenna turned and walked to the back. Darren returned to the front, where Maria was showing a new hire how to clean the blender blades without damaging the seal.
"You're good at that," he said.
She looked up, surprised. At what? Explaining things. Being patient. I just didn't want her to cut herself. That's how it starts. She looked confused. What starts? Leadership. That afternoon, Darren pulled out his phone and began composing a message to the rest of the company. Not a press release. Just a memo, plain spoken, direct and honest. He wrote about the danger of distance, about how growth can blind owners to the cracks forming beneath them. He wrote about Jenna, about Maria, about the power of small moments to reveal big truths. He didn't mention Kyle or Lacey by name. He didn't need to. The message wasn't about punishment. It was about responsibility. As he hit send, he looked around the cafe. Jenna was showing the new guy how to close out the register. Maria was wiping down the counter, her sleeves rolled up. The store wasn't perfect. It was still short-staffed, still running behind, still healing. But for the first time in a long time, it felt like something was being built, not just sold. And this time, Darren wasn't watching from a distance. He was right there in the middle of it. A week later, the East Side Cafe felt different, not perfect, not polished, but alive in a way Darren hadn't seen since the early days. The morning rush still hit hard, and the staff was still covering more ground than ideal, but the energy had shifted. People moved with purpose instead of panic. The music wasn't just background noise now. Someone actually turned it up when the doors opened. And when customers lined up, they were greeted, not just served. Darren sat in the corner booth near the window, a laptop open, his apron folded beside him. Jenna stood behind the counter, not running the shift, but present, checking restocks, helping with training when needed. She hadn't officially accepted the manager role yet, but her decisions were already being followed. He watched as Maria navigated the register, guiding a new hire through a complicated breakfast combo code without needing to pause. She leaned slightly toward the screen, whispering instructions just loud enough for the trainee to hear without embarrassing her. It was subtle, but it mattered.
No flustered faces.
No raised voices. Jenna slid into the seat across from Darren, a clipboard in hand. "I've got 3 people willing to pick up extra hours, but we still need coverage on Saturday mornings," she said, flipping a page. "I'm thinking about asking Anthony from South Congress to transfer in for a few weeks. He's solid." "He'd do it if you called him," Darren said. "He respects you." She hesitated for half a second. "You already talked to him?" "I mentioned the idea. He said he'd follow through if you were the one running things." Jenna looked down, thumb tapping the edge of the clipboard. "You didn't just come here to fire people, did you?"
"No.
"I came because I forgot what this place was built on. I let layers grow between me and the people actually keeping it running." She didn't respond right away. Then, "You think that's fixable?" "Only if I stay close enough to feel when it's not." She nodded once, then stood. "I'm not taking the full-time manager role yet. I'm not pushing. But if we hire 2 more and I can train them myself, I'd consider stepping up on my terms." "You'll get what you need," Darren said. She walked away without another word, leaving the clipboard behind. Maria approached a few minutes later with a question about supply orders. She'd started making her own shorthand list, clean, color-coded, with notes about what ran out fastest. Darren didn't ask her to. No one did. "I thought we might try ordering 2 fewer of the breakfast sandwiches that don't sell," she said. "We always throw them out." "Good catch," Darren said. "Make the call. You've got my trust." She blinked. "Really? You're not just making drinks anymore. You're thinking like an owner." She gave a slow nod. then returned to the register, shoulders a little higher. Later that afternoon, while Darren was reviewing supplier contracts, a man in a gray windbreaker stepped through the front door and scanned the cafe. His eyes landed on Darren with a flicker of recognition. He walked straight over. "Kyle," Darren said, standing. "Didn't come to make a scene," Kyle said quickly, hands slightly raised. "Just figured I owed you something." "You owed Jenna and the team something," Darren replied. "They're the ones who had to unlearn everything you taught them." Kyle's mouth tightened. "I didn't see it. I thought I was pushing them to be better." "You were pushing them out the door." "I got another job," Kyle said. "Warehouse coordinator. Pays less, but I'm not in charge of people. Probably for the best." Darren studied him for a long moment. "Why come back?" "I don't know. Maybe just needed to see it wasn't burning down without me." "It's doing better without you." Kyle nodded.
"Yeah,
"I can see that." He turned to leave, then paused. "Tell Jenna." "Never mind. She doesn't owe me a conversation." He walked out. Darren didn't stop him. By early evening, the cafe had quieted. Chairs weren't stacked yet, but the crowd had thinned, and the espresso machine had been cleaned mid-shift instead of during the final rush. Darren walked to the back office, the one that had been locked for weeks under Lacey, and looked around. The desk was cleared, inventory logs updated, and a whiteboard covered with shift notes and feedback ideas from the team. He picked up a dry erase marker and wrote one line at the top. "What do we need to do better?" By closing, 5 responses were already written underneath. All initials. All specific. One suggested relabeling syrup bottles. Another asked for a quiet space during breaks. None were complaints, they were solutions waiting for space to live. Outside, the sun had dipped low. Jenna was stacking chairs with Maria, both moving slower now, fatigue finally catching up. Darren stepped in, lifted the last 2 stools, and flipped them onto a table. "You don't need to stay," Jenna said without looking at him. "I know," Darren said, "but I want to." When the lights dimmed and the register was locked, he stood with them by the front door. "This place is going to change," he said. "And not just this one. All of them." Jenna raised an eyebrow. "You planning to go undercover again?"
no.
"I'm planning to stay connected. Quarterly visits. Anonymous customer surveys. And every store will have a direct line to someone who actually listens." Maria zipped up her jacket. "Will they believe it?" "They will," Darren said. "Because you'll be the reason they do." Jenna reached for the keys but paused, then handed them to Maria. "You close up." Maria blinked. "Really?" "You've earned it," Jenna said. Maria turned the lock and checked it twice, then looked back at them through the glass door with a small, proud nod. Jenna and Darren stood on the sidewalk, the streetlights flickering on. "You're not the guy I expected," she said after a moment. "You're exactly the one I hoped I'd find," he replied. She gave a soft chuckle and walked off toward her car, keys jingling in her hand. Darren stayed a moment longer, staring at the cafe through the glass. It didn't look like a franchise. It looked like a place that mattered. And for the first time in far too long, he wasn't watching from a distance. He was part of it again, where he belonged.